Hello and welcome to the 1871 podcast with Dylan Kerr, Johnny Hunt and me, Mark Roach. And Johnny is joining us. He's actually walking as we speak because he's on his charity walk on his way to Bournemouth. So hello to both of you. And our special guest tonight is Royals legend Graeme Murty. So hello and a big 1871 welcome to you, Graeme. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on. Johnny, be very, very careful, mate.
You're very welcome, Graeme. Great to have you on as a guest. And before we talk to you, Graeme, I just want to do a quick catch up on the current Reading side first. And it's not very good, is it really? Let's face it. So 10 games to go for the Royals and also 10 games to go for Barnsley and Peterborough. Derby have played a game more. Reading currently 4 points clear of Barnsley. And if we look at current form, over the last 3 games, it's a pretty dire situation for the Royals. So Derby have 3 points from the last 3 games. Barnsley and Peterborough have 2 points. And Reading, of course, have no points from the last 3 games. And they've got the joint worst goals against, with Peterborough on 72 goals conceded, which is an average of 2 goals a game, although it's obviously 9 goals against in the last 3 games. And all 4 of those teams in action this week. So Reading at Bournemouth tonight, Barnsley at home to Bristol City, and Derby away to Blackburn. And then Peterborough are at home against Swansea tomorrow. And I think it's fair to say that Barnsley are looking like a big threat for Reading. They've got a better goal difference. They've drawn the last 2 games, including a point against Championship leaders Fulham on Saturday. Although it's fair to say Barnsley's penalty was a bit controversial, to put it mildly. So I normally ask Johnny or Dylan, but I'm going to ask you, Graeme. What do you make of the situation Reading find themselves in now? Is it down to the players not showing enough fight? Is it that the interim manager is not quite up to it? Or is it that the players aren't good enough? What are your thoughts?
I don't think it's any single element. I think a lot of things have to contribute. The squad on paper is very, very talented. There's more than enough ability in the squad to be higher up the league. But you see teams that have momentum, you see teams that have energy and spirit, and that's all you really hope for at this time of the season. The good thing about it is it's in Reading's hands. So if they go and execute and go and play really well, then they'll be safe and no one can do anything about it. But they have to go and execute. And the worrying part is that when called upon, the execution hasn't quite been there at times. So you just hope and keep your fingers crossed that it remains within Reading's own hands right up until the final day and until we're safe.
And obviously Bournemouth tonight, big game. You know, they're chasing automatic promotion, but let's kind of park that because it is a bit worrying. We know for Reading it is a bit doom and gloom. There's talk of, we wish we'd got Neil Warnock. Actually, there's quite a bit of talk of we wish Graeme Murty would come in, by the way, on social media. But let's go back to your time at Reading, and I want to start with the obvious one, the 106 season, your record-breaking penalty. So I'm going to set the scene. That season, you actually lost the first game against Plymouth. But you only lost 1 more that season. And we get to the last day of the season, 30th of April, 2006. Reading home to QPR. They need to win to break the record for most points in a season. It's 1-1 going into the last 6 minutes. Reading win a penalty and up steps Graeme Murty. So, Graeme, what do you remember about that season? And in particular, that game and your record-breaking goal?
I remember lots about the season itself in the way that it panned out and the way that the team blended together in such a really, really cohesive and strong way. I don't think that the manager and his backroom staff get enough credit because of the recruitment and the astute way they managed us through the season and made sure that we understood what our jobs were and what the potential was for us to go and be successful. But the players blended into the best team I've ever been a part of. They were an absolute pleasure to play with. And one of the things I really remember is that no matter how many hits we took, the team just kept on coming back. I think Crystal Palace away was a really, really good example where we concede a goal and then we go straight up to the end and score an equaliser, and it's just we seem to be that kind of team that never knew when we were down. And I've watched Neil Warnock's interview actually earlier, talking about he would have taken the job, but Paul's doing it now. I've always had some really good banter with the Reading fans. That's not how we recalled it. We recalled it as he got a load of stick, but he always seemed to want desperately to beat us and never seemed to manage it. He never seemed to actually get our number, so to speak. But that season we had everyone's number. Even the games that we lost, we could and should have won them. And then going into the last game, I knew I was going to get a chance. And I'd been practicing. And Dylan will know that whenever you're playing fullback, you spend most of your time on a flank looking into the pitch. So your normal pass goes that way across your body. So you look that way, but you play that way. And I've got that pass in the bag. I've got that finish from the penalty spot in the bag, the one going into the left corner. I thought it was too obvious, so I thought I'd just run up as hard and twat it as hard as I could. It kind of worked.
And you look pretty happy about it. I watched the video again yesterday, and you looked very happy about that. And I think you took out the mascot, didn't you?
He deserved it. He deserved it. He'd been absolutely battering me for weeks, saying I was the only one not going to be able to score. He was slaughtering me for ages. I'm not going to score. You're not going to score. And I said to him, "You're going to get it as soon as I score. You're getting it. So you better start running." And he started, but he didn't get very far. So that's one of my overriding memories was doing that. But then looking at, I think it was Stephen Hunt went straight over the top of everything. Looking back on that was brilliant because I couldn't see a thing. I was on the floor just laying into him. So I enjoyed that bit.
Graeme, you said about earlier about the Reading team now, and you actually mirroring what we did when I was at Reading. We went into the game knowing we weren't going to get beat, and if we were going to get beat, we're going to get beat by a better team, and that was our aim, was to just go out there and play the way we trained, and we had a great atmosphere on and off the field, which carried us through, 85 minutes. Even if you were 1-0 down, we knew that Quinny would be able to put one in the 90th minute. Archie had do the same, and it's frustrating that Reading are now in a position where, they've got to change it, and they've got to change it quick, because 10 games is going to become 9, 8, 7, and to get them points, if the other teams below them are picking points up, you get into that rut. And it's a kind of similar situation to what I'm finding myself here in South Africa. But I've got my players playing and going out and giving the bloody damn hardest. And unfortunately, as you know well, when you're at the bottom of the league, you don't get the rub of the green. You always get the knocks, and I think, what do you think we're Reading now have got to do to stay in the championship?
Yeah, what I found with that team, the 106 team in particular, was that there was never anyone that was content pointing a finger because something had gone wrong. One of Steve Coppell's massive mantras, and something I've taken forward into my own coaching career, is that no one has to be right on the football pitch. You know what footballers like? Something goes wrong, and there'll be people pointing fingers and shouting and digging people out, not for the right reasons, in order to enhance performance, but to make themselves look good and make themselves feel better. But that team that we had, nothing could come between us. No matter what went wrong or who made a mistake, we just reacted brilliantly, and we reacted cohesively and together. So if someone knocked us down, we collectively got ourselves back up and went straight back into it. And that's what you need to do. I do feel that the team that manages to get that spirit can generate a run. And if they generate a run, they'll be safe. If they generate a run, they'll take themselves away. I do think that not taking any points has given the teams below Reading impetus and encouragement that they're catchable, rather than actually burying them and saying that you're behind us, you're gone, and actually putting them away. Reading haven't put them away yet, but they have the capacity to do it. They have the firepower to do it. It's just doing it in a consistent way, I think, that generates a spate of 3 wins. That could be
I look at the body language. I mean, I watched the game. Well, I watched highlights. We get the highlights here on the Sunday afternoon, and I just, after the second goal, it's like they've given up. you know, the body language, you can see from the body language, the way that the heads are already down, the shoulders are down, you know, the way that they're walking shows to me is like, oh, well, you know, we're not going to get back into this game. And, you know, I've never done that in my career. I've never played with players that have done that. You know, they'll give it a go. You like say you point fingers and you'll shout at somebody, but you got a reaction. You didn't sulk. You didn't cry about it. You just got on with it and tried to get back into the game.
See the team almost before that cycle that culminated in the 106 team, the team that got promoted into the championship at Brentford, right? So we go there, no, we need a draw, and Couples got Brentford flying. They're doing really well. Quite a lot of those guys end up playing for us, and they're really good guys. People like Hunty and Ivar and Lloyd. So you're thinking they're a good team, and we go 1-0 down. And I remember Adi Williams, really, really, really calm, but really, really strong in his belief. He just said, "Don't worry about it. We'll get one. We're definitely getting one. Just believe." And you're like, "All right, Aid," because that resonates through the team and it also spreads through the team. I look at when we talk to young players, particularly, we talk about their sphere of influence. So if you imagine really young players, it extends about a meter from their body. They only really come alive when the ball gets within that meter of them. And then they can be really, really, really good. But when you look at experienced pros, I used to use Peter Schmeichel. His influence was over the entire pitch. So he could influence a centre forward with his body language and his communication. And Adi had that aura. Adi Vivash had that aura. Parky had that aura. I hoped to grab some of it. I started to grow into it. Siddy had it. How many of the players now have got that? Rather than just taking care of me, how many people are taking care of you? Yeah. So you're having a tough time. You're dealing with, I mean, someone's going to come up against Todd Cantwell, possibly against Bournemouth. Young lad I coached at Norwich, really talented, receives the ball like Adam Lallana, brilliant at running with the ball, really elusive. He could be a problem. Now, if you're having a hard time with him, who's got your back? I knew for a fact that whenever I played with James Harper on the inside of the midfield next to me, he'd be there in case someone ran inside me with the ball. Because he'd be there shouting at me the whole way through. "I've got it, Mert. Send him down the line. You do him. If he comes this way, I've got him. I've got him." Not just taking care of himself, but taking care of me. I wonder, in all of the teams that you watch, how many people are going outside of themselves and taking care of the next guy and the next guy and the next guy and making them better, because that's what good teams do.
Graeme, just very true. That's a quick one. There are some players, quite a few players out of contract, so there has been a question mark over their attitude and how much hunger and desire they've got. How much of a factor is that?
You should be able to see it on the pitch. Dylan will tell you if they're not there, if they're not committed, you should be able to see it. If they're not willing to go that extra yard, and you would hope that they would do, because they should have that professional pride. However, having said that, if you're out of contract next season and you don't want to be injured, how committed would you be to a 50-50 or a 60-40 against? How willing would you be to put your body on the line? Hopefully, the people that Dylan's talking about, people I'm talking about, you'll be there. No problem, because that's what the job requires. But if you're saying there's a question mark, then surely the staff are questioning the players, and the players should be questioning themselves and one another, making sure that they're held to account and making sure that they have that professional standard. It's quite dispiriting, actually, to hear you say that.
That's what I'm hearing. I went to the Millwall game, and actually there was quite a bit of urgency at the end when they're chasing the game. But obviously the last game, I wasn't at the game, but I think it was a sort of a bit of a collapse at the end. I just want to come to Johnny now. Johnny, are you still with us, or have you fallen over? You still on the walk?
No, I'm still here. I just muted myself because of the traffic. No, Graeme, what I was going to say, because I remember when you started at Reading back in 98, wasn't it? You were signed as a winger. Was that correct, from Sheffield Wednesday?
From York City.
York City, sorry. And you as a winger, and like your start of your career with us was quite tough, wasn't it? You had a few injuries and took a while to.
Yeah, it was awful. I broke down in pre-season just before the season started. and I did my hamstring. I didn't really get to play at the start. And you miss it because you're one of Tommy's bigger signings. You're hoping to hit the ground running. I didn't. That was really, really difficult. Coming down away from the Northeast into a bigger changing room, a bigger expectation from a club, and not being able to perform was really difficult mentally. But I managed to get back, and then lo and behold, my ninth game in, it's the first time I actually played wide right. We got to Luton Town away, and I dislocated my ankle. I got taken out, and that cost me 10 months. In reality, it probably cost me 18 months, because in that time when you're getting back, you're not right. Your body's not right. You're fighting little niggles and injuries. And what made it even worse was that Tommy got the sack whilst I wasn't playing for him. And the sense of guilt that you have is awful. So you have to go and look the guy in the eye and apologize and shake his hand and wish him good luck. And I'll never forget it in the way that he held himself and comported himself. And he just shook my hand. And then he gave me a cuddle and he went, "We know how good you are. Don't worry about us.
Wow.
Just be as good as you can be." And I was like, that takes a big man to look outside of what's happening to you personally and make sure that I'm all right. Because he could see how down I was.
Yeah.
He actually put his arm around me at that time when he's just been sacked. It was just a measure of the guy. So,
but that's the beauty of Tommy Burns. I mean, I just want to go back a wee bit. You were a winger. No, never in a million years were you a winger.
mate, have you not seen my goal against Everton? Seriously.
Oh, that fluke! Yes, I've always.
Oh, yeah, I fluked it over Neville Southall. Yeah,
exactly. Well, I mean, Neville were 55, by the way. Then. So anyway, great. What's happening? Where are you now? I mean, I've just been in complete shock because I knew you were doing such an absolutely magnificent job at Rangers, you know, and obviously I honestly didn't know. I do apologise. I didn't know.
You're rubbish.
And I'm devastated, pal. Because are you still living in Glasgow?
I mean, we're in the West End of Glasgow at the moment. Because my little girl's still got about 18 months left to finish her schooling up here. Yeah. If we came back down south now, she'd have to go down a year in her GCSEs because they're so different. So she'll stay. So I'm currently looking. There's a few things come up, and there's a few things I've applied for. So I'm waiting to see what's next.
What about Graeme? Because we have had quite a few suggestions. I mean, there's been a fair few for Neil Warnock, to be fair, but quite a few people have said we'd like to see Graeme Murty. Would that job appeal to you? Reading job?
Of course it would. Of course it would. You'd had a jumped at it. I'd have walked back.
I would have swung back.
You would have swung back.
You're walking away from it.
You've got harpoon, pal.
Right. So yeah. How does that work though? Because Dylan's talked about this. You don't necessarily put yourself. I mean, sometimes you can apply for jobs, but it does feel as if there's a bit of a closed circle sometimes. Is that how you read it?
Yeah, that's not just at Reading though. If I'm honest, there's been lots of jobs that have come up recently. They're already filled before they came out. You know, and Dylan will know that. I mean, you look at let's look at Bradford, for example. My wife says to me, Bradford's just come up, and her family from York, so she's thinking we could move to York, be close to her family, and she'd be happy. I'm thinking as far away from York as possible, basically. But I knew when it came out that Mark Hughes already had it. And where's their manager gone? Their manager's been headhunted to fill a slot at Morecambe, who's been headhunted to fill a slot at St Mirren, so those jobs are already filled. So a lot of the time that they're gone before you hear about them, and regardless of your personal attachment to the club or your emotional state, that people who are in position are going to make their decision based on what they believe to be best for the club. So you have to understand it. You don't have to like it, but you just have to say, right, okay, that's something I think I could have been good at. Let's go again. What else is out there? So you take advice from people that you trust, and you try and stay positive, and more than anything, you try and reflect on what you can do better.
Yeah, I mean,
you'd be good at that, Bill. You're when I've talked to you in the past, talking about the job that you do. And by the way, this guy doesn't get anywhere near enough credit for the job that he's doing. So, but what he is he's ruthlessly self-analytical, and he understands, right, I need to do this better and that better and that better. But when he goes in somewhere, he gets the lay of the land really quickly. He understands the environments he works in, which makes him really successful, which attests to how adaptable and clever he is. But people back in England don't see it, so they don't give him credit.
Graeme,
You know what?
I started the walk, mate. I bumped into Nicky Hammond at the hotel.
I saw the picture.
That he's a big cog, wasn't he, in that team off the pitch, and what he did recruitment-wise with Doyle and Long. That seems to be missing as well in the club, doesn't it? You know, the recruitment off the pitch, the players, the what, I don't know. What do you? How does it? It's like a big jigsaw, isn't it?
I think that's a really good analogy, actually, because you're not seeing the joined up thinking that went behind that recruitment. You're not seeing Eamon Dolan having a conversation with his brother and Brian McDermott working and Nicky Hammond working, and then them feeding into Steve and Steve going and Kevin Dillon having an input. You're not seeing those things happening, which at the majority of clubs you won't see.
Yeah.
There was always that understanding that those people, the recruitment side, were really solid with the first team side.
Yeah.
But it was a cohesive view and they all knew what they were looking to go and recruit. You know, I mean, you go and look at it and you say, right, well, what are Reading's needs now? What do Reading need to get them over the line? Is it a winger?
Just a gamble, isn't it? Like they just pick players out of, and again, agents and stuff. It seems to be behind the scenes as well. It's just, it's horrible to watch as a fan, as much as the next player as well. It must be.
I'll ask you a question then. So this is something that I'm quite big on. I think Dylan's quite big on it as well. The transparency of what you do as a manager, in the way that you speak to players and the way that you speak to agents, but primarily in the way you speak to your fans, is key to get that connection. I mean, look at the connection that 106 team had with the fans. The fact that our wives and partners put together a charity for Berkshire and then raised that amount of money over a couple of seasons. The fact that we were always visible and always attainable, and you're actually part of and representative of the area that you're in. So if that connection is there and the feeling,
we identified with you, Graeme. I think that's yourself and Dylan. We identified you as people, not just footballers. That's the difference. Now it's just sort of people that wear a shirt and play for the club, and do they really care? Like, do you know what I mean? It's like that identity's gone, isn't it?
Graeme, I've got a really interesting point here, and someone, and this has come up on social media as well. People have been talking about this. In Paul Ince did an interview, and during that interview, he referred to Reading as they. Is that a slip of the tongue, or is that a telltale thing with the way he feels about the players? What do you make of that?
I think you'll have to ask him. Only he will know what he's trying to convey. Because managers, when they talk, generally they'll couch their honesty into a message for the squad. That I'm going to get my message out there through answering this question really well, but there's going to be something that the players need to hear. But only Paul will know what he meant by it. So he'll know. You have to ask him. Whether he tell you or not, it'll be two different things. But the players need to know. The players will know. And going back to your point, John, the players have to know. Do you know what was brilliant for me? My wife was so good, because I'm at heart, you not believe this, I'm actually quite a shy person. I'm quite an introverted kind of guy. My wife would slaughter me if you didn't think I was giving the fans due consideration or any time if I wouldn't talk to them, which I find quite hard. But you have to put yourself out there because of the job that you've chosen to do. You have to be available, and you have to be relatable. My wife goes mad when she sees players coming off with the big headphones on and not talking to people, refuse to sign autographs, and I'm like, that's just the way they zone in. They get themselves into. And she's like, nah, they've travelled that amount of distance, they've spent that amount of money. The least you can do is say hello, and that resonated with me.
When I flew back from Oz for that QPR game, and you let me wear your medal, that as a fan means everything, mate. When I say that, it's a thank you. That's what it's about for us as people, you know.
But it's not mine. It's not mine.
I know.
I played it. I wouldn't have the opportunity to be successful or not successful. I wouldn't have the opportunity to go and do what I did, which I never thought I would get the chance to do, without the backing of the club. I represent the club. All right, I've got my name on the shirt, but I'm a transient part of the club. Unfortunately, players are transient. Managers are transient. They come in, they go out. They come in, they go out. Some people are lucky enough to last for a longer time. Unfortunately, for fans, you're stuck. You've got your team, and you can't change your team. You're stuck with your team. I'm fortunate. I support Liverpool, so I'm buzzing at the minute.
Mark, Johnny, before we get cut off, I've just got this one thing that I need to say to the Reading fans, but also to you two. One of the biggest. I don't live on regrets. I got married. I regretted that. That was probably the biggest regret ever. But I remember I flew back from Kenya to do my pro license, or did from Tanzania, and I was going to do my pro license with Graeme, with Murty, and we were going to actually partner up. You know, it was such, because we'd not met each other in person, and we attended this Scottish pro license, and I remember telling Graeme, Murty, I remember telling you I'm not doing it, and you said to me, I'm fucking gutted, because I'd have loved to have been your partner, and obviously I had my reasons not to do the pro license, but I do regret that, Graeme. I do regret that, because I think we've got the same ideology, the same way of thinking, the same way of appreciation of the club and the fans and the people that work in the club. And, that's something I've actually, I've regretted in my football career, and like I say, we spent a couple of hours together and we actually clicked, and that was the beauty of it. And, that's what you need in football. Does Michael Gilks and Pauline click? Do all these coaches have an understanding of who they are and who they're working with and working for?
Well, but then, are they speaking the same language? Are they consistent in their message? Do the players understand that the message coming from the coach is definitely coming from the gaffer, because it's coming down in a straight line? I think that's a really interesting point, Dil. I did an article recently in the Times. I said, don't tend to live in regret. I much prefer, and I speak to my daughter about it all the time. I think gratitude's a vastly underrated thought process. What are you grateful for today? Oh, I've had a bad day at school. That was rubbish. She said this, and what are you grateful for today? We live in a brilliant place. We've all got our health. All right. There's loads worse things going on in the world. I'm grateful for the opportunity that I had to play for the club. I'm grateful for the opportunity that I had to represent the places that I did. And nothing will actually make me look back on it with anything other than that gratitude that I feel so deeply, because it's had such an impact on mine and my family's life. I'm grateful for the fact that York turned down a bid from Sheffield United because I got the chance to go to Reading. I'm grateful to Tommy for bringing me. I was grateful to meet you at the pro license. I was a little bit gutted. Yeah. But I was grateful to go and get the learning of listening to Walter Smith and Roy Hodgson and people like that and learning. And I think that's a byproduct of a curious mind. And I think that's something that's really, really stood me in good stead all the way through from when I was a scholar. I've always wanted to know why and how things worked and make sure that I can try and do my part to make them work a little bit better. So it would have been good to have in the pro license, mate. It would have been
funny.
Is it too late? Can you still do something together? You and Reading? Could we see you Reading at some point?
Left right back in the club.
I'm not being funny, mate. There's more chance of me peddling to where he is at the minute than that.
You don't want to come here. The weather's 32 degrees, so it's quite nice today. Actually,
mate, I live in Glasgow, for God's sake. It's bloody
I
crazy.
live in Ireland. Thanks, Dylan. Cheers for that, mate. You're so kind.
It was amazing. I actually went for a swim in the pool, and it was absolutely pishing down with rain.
On that note, that's all we got time for. Sorry, Dylan. Anyway, look, Graeme, we are about to run out of time. So look, just want to say from all three of us and for the
Thank you so much.
everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate it.
No, it's a pleasure. Keep the faith. Keep the faith. You know, it's in our hands. So just get behind everyone and make sure that you just radiate positivity, because that's what they need.
Mertz, I'm going to WhatsApp you in 2 seconds when we hang up. So
I'm going to ignore you.
Oh,
Cheers,
well,
Matt.
don't.
Thanks a lot, mate.
So
Listen, cheers, John.
Cheers.
Go safe, Johnny.
So listen,
Cheers, mate. Thanks a
everyone,
lot.
it's Bournemouth away tonight. Come on, you Royals. And a reminder that our guest on Friday is Laurie Sanchez. And we're also going to ask Laurie what he thinks of the current state of affairs with the Royals. And he's not someone to mince his words. So join us on Friday from 6:30 p.m. And don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 1871 Podcast. So thank you. Take care and good night. And come on, you R's.